Hello, my name is Adam Schroeder. I make stuff under the name R25th. I've been doing alt control, physical construction stuff since around 2017. And I've been with RunJumpDev since around the same time. I have two pieces that I worked on in the Claw. Oasis from a Dying Empire and Duplications Only Mimic the Whole, and that is 9 miniature claw machines, like that kids have as toys, placed inside of one of the big claw machines, and you control all 9 of them simultaneously from the same control panel. And they are stair-stepped, so there's 3 banks of 3, and the prize chute is funneled from the layer above to the layer below. So when you win the top layer, the prize then goes to the middle layer and then the base layer and then onto the floor of the machine where you can't actually win anything because the prize chute is covered. That one, a member of RunJumpDev, Tim, came up with while we were brainstorming right after we won all these claw machines. Is like, oh, you should control a bunch of them at the same time. I'm like, oh, you absolutely should. And I was really influenced by a game I can't find anymore. It was a Flash game on either like Albino Black Sheep or Miniclip or funmathgames.com, something where it was Breakout or Arkanoid, one of those games where you had a paddle at the bottom and you broke bricks. But when you hit one of the bricks, a mini game of Breakout would start inside of that, and you had to keep that going in order to break the block properly, but you still had to control the big one, so you would end up starting multiple one of these mini games, and you had to play all of them at the same time in order to progress through the game. So this idea of like recursive play was on the forefront of my thought process on working on Duplications Only Mimic the Whole. Is like, you are playing a claw machine, but the actual like claw part of it is taken out. You're not actually playing a big claw machine, you're playing a facsimile of a claw machine, and you're playing a bunch of facsimiles all simultaneously. That kind of, it mimics the whole experience of having a claw machine, but is something distinctly different. Because the mini claw machines control differently. The play mechanics are different because you don't actually drop a claw and win something. Like, in order to get something, you have to bring it from the top floor all the way down. And overall, I think it works well. It really captures the aesthetic I was going for. My father Ezra helped build the stair-step pattern, but all the wiring was good old me. One thing that's really like proved helpful for my work process is not thinking things through thoroughly at the beginning. And that sounds weird, but what it means is that had I really thought about how much work and how much effort it would be to get everything working properly, I wouldn't do this project. But because I didn't think about it in advance, I was too deep in it to bail. Which means that I have this really neat project now. And what I mean by that is that each claw machine has 7 controls. So it has a D-pad for movement, up and drop and lower, drop and raise claw lever, and a start button. you also have to have a ground wire in order for the electricity to work. In order for electronics to work, you need to have a ground. And luckily these all shared a ground, so that I only had to run one wire of it. So this is 8 wires that I had to run for each machine, which again is 9. And I had to solder onto the button pads, which are A, really fragile, and B, not designed to be soldered on. Because what they are is they're these little like circle-shaped pads that like kind of lock together, kind of like fingers, but there's a space in between each one. And how a traditional dome switch works, which is used a lot in these cheap toys or cheap keyboards, is there's a little rubber dome and there is a pad of carbon or some other electric conductive material. And what it does is you press down the rubber, which acts kind of like a spring, and that pushes the conductive material against these fingers, thereby electrically connecting them and completing a circuit. So what I have to do is I have to make sure that I only get my wire that I'm running to it attached to one half of it without making any connection to it on a thing that is designed to be really easy to connect the two. So that's 8 wires from each machine. And then also there are 2 more wires that I have to run for the battery contacts, so I can run them off of a single power supply instead of each one of them battery operated, which, well, very funny, would be a nightmare to do. So there's actually 10 wires running out of each of these machines. And they have to be daisy chained. So it's actually in the 3 banks. So the top left connects to the top middle, which then connects to the top right, and then that connects to the center right, where the center left and center middle are connected to that center right, and then that's connected to the bottom right, which again, bottom left, bottom middle connects to the bottom right, and those run down into the cavity of the claw machine where there isn't a whole lot happening down there. But in order for the claw machine to actually like be at standing height, there's a bunch of space down there. So it runs in this cavity, and there's about a foot in between each machine. So 10 wires on 9 machines, 90 wires. Actually, it's closer to a foot and a half. That's 120 feet of wire just on the top half. And then the wires go down to the bottom. So that's probably an extra 50 feet of wire because you got 10 of those, and that's to go down to the floor. And then just miscellaneous other stuff. There's probably around 200 feet of wire in this machine that all of them have to work in tandem for the entire thing to work. Because if one of the wires gets disconnected inside the machine, which again is easy because the pads I'm soldered onto are fragile, then that direction just won't work. There's a lot of putting out tiny fires constantly for this one machine. In the end, it works for the most part, and I'm really proud of that. One thing I've realized that I have since fixed is that I filled the top layer machines, which is where all the prizes started. So the middle and bottom layers had no prizes in it. It's only in the top, so you had to have them funneled down. I realized, because no one had won anything, that the top layers I had overfilled so that the claw couldn't get in there. Like, the fingers aren't really tapered in such a way to really go down and grab a circular thing. It needs space underneath it to grab it. So I've taken out and it should be winnable now, but that meant the first half of the show, no one has gotten anything out of it. But apparently people are playing it and people are enjoying it. It lights up, it's pretty, it's fun to see all 9 machines work in tandem. But yeah, I think that's that piece. Again, I think aesthetically it works well. Conceptually, it's about what I imagine. But if I was to go back in time to before I started this project, and one thing I would change is that I just wouldn't do it. So this maximalist design philosophy kind of blinded me to how much actual integral work is necessary to have everything work all simultaneously all at the same time, because there's no fallback. If the thing fails, it fails, and then the machine is no longer working in a way that it should be. Because if you can't go right anymore, then you're stuck on the left side of the machine the entire time. So all 7 of those buttons need to be working in tandem, and the ground has to work, the battery connections have to work, so all 10 wires in this machine have to be working properly all the time in order for this machine to work conceptually. But now that that's behind me, I think it's worked really well, and I'm really proud about where it's ended up, and honestly I'm really proud about the entire show. It looks exceptionally well. We bought these claw machines in February of 2020, which, if you keep in the back of your mind the world events, stuff happened immediately after February of 2020. So we sat on these machines for a pretty long time without getting properly working on them, and what we were able to do with the time that we had, I think, is exceeded pretty much all of our expectations. I think the whole thing works really well, and I think the Claw as a cohesive show is one of the better ones that we've done. I think that it works just well, especially at night, because we have this front window in the middle of downtown, and when the lights are off at night, the machines occasionally stay on, so there's all these claw machines with art in them lit up in this dark gallery that you can just see walking around downtown, and they are beautiful, and I think that overall it's just a really good show that we put on this year. But I've been talking for a really long time now, and I've covered my pieces and my feelings on the show and what I thought would have worked better for my pieces. But yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. I will let you go. If you watched this whole thing, I'm proud of you.